A young woman, dressed in prim and proper business attire, suddenly came barging through the door. As the heavy mahogany double doors slammed against the walls, everyone who was in the room swung their gazes to rest on the petite yet curvaceous young lady. She has round glasses propped on the bridge of her nose and her hair is pulled up into a neat-looking bun. "Evangeline, what are you doing here?" Samuel Young asked as he rose from his seat at the head of a long table. He is currently in the midst of having a meeting with the board of directors in his classy office. "What do you mean by that, grandfather? I should be the one asking you that question. I am the CEO of this company." "Eva, leave this place. I will talk to you once we're home. You can't be so disrespectful and barge into a meeting room without prior notice." The old man waved his hand in a dismissive gesture as he sat back into his chair. Eva's eyes widened as she stood there stubbornly and asked, "Grandfather, I am utterly confused." She clenched her fists as she felt angered at how she was being disrespected. Samuel lost his cool and shouted at her. "From today onwards, you will step down from your position as this company's CEO. The board of directors has already chosen the one who will be replacing you and she's going to take over as soon as possible." Eva was stunned into silence. Her body was unmoving as she looked at the faces of everyone around the table. None of them were showing any signs of shock like she was feeling at the moment. "What did you say? You're stripping me of my position, why?" Eva demanded in disbelief as she slowly walked over to where her grandfather was seated. "Eva, go home. I will talk to you," Samuel replied with a sigh, completely not answering her questions. Eva burst out in anger, her fingers were clenched so hard, they were digging so deeply into her palms that little crescents had formed. "I demand an explanation right now, grandfather. Tell me, what the hell is happening?" Samuel's voice thundered over the chaos as he rose from his seat again and says, "It's because you are not my legitimate granddaughter." Eva froze in shock. Shaking her head in denial, Eva turned her face to look at Samuel Young, and says, "Grandfather, what are you saying? How could you say that?" Samuel boomed out, cutting Eva off. "The DNA test just came out yesterday. You are not related to us by blood." Denial hitting her hard as her body began to tremble. The old man turned around, effectively dismissing her. And says, "I will show you the DNA test results later." Her hands were trembling as she slowly clenched them into fists. Eva gritted her teeth and looked at her grandfather again. And says, "Because I am not related to you by blood, you're saying that I'm no longer qualified to be the company's CEO?" The old man averted his gaze, causing Eva to laugh out like a villainess. "You will assist your sister," Samuel quickly said, in the hopes of placating her. She barked out in laughter again. And says, "My dear younger sister is the one who will be replacing me." Before Samuel could continue his sentence, Eva raised her hand like a boss, stopping the old man from speaking any further. Something dangerous blazed in her eyes as she looked straight at him. Bittersweet and painful smile curved on her face. Then her eyes became menacing as she stared at the old man once again. And says, "Listen, Mr. Chairman, without me, XY Corporation will crumble down into pieces." With her head held high, she swished out of the room like a queen. At a clinic, Eva sat in a chair staring at her DNA results as her hands could not stop trembling. She muttered to herself, "So, this must have been the actual reason why I was treated like a robot since I was young, and my parents and family are so cold to me." Recalling her memories, Eva remembered her time with her grandmother. Eva remembered asking her grandmother, "Grandma, do Mom and Dad hate me? They never come to visit me and they never come to my school, too, even if my teachers ask them to." Her grandmother had replied, "They are training you, Eva, so you can survive the harsh world we'll one day face when you grow up." She remembered herself trying to understand what her grandmother was telling her. Ending her recollection of the past, Eva smirked as she crumpled the paper in her hand. "They must have known from the start that I was not their legitimate daughter. That's why they never showed even an ounce of care nor love towards me. They just kept me and raised me because they knew I would be a great asset to them. They are casting me out now after they are done using me." After leaving the clinic, Eva found herself driving fast. She was trying to call someone but no one was answering her call. Her lips were still trembling but she kept her face cool. When she arrived in front of a luxurious apartment, she rushed up to the highest floor as quickly as she could. While riding the elevator and waiting to get to the highest floor, she nibbled on her thumb. Once the elevator dinged, signaling her arriving at her destination, she rushed out and ran to the unit at the end of the hallway. She tapped in the password of Julian's apartment and entered. But the moment she closed the door and turned around, she froze at the sight of a pair of red high heels at the entrance to the hallway. Nervously, she silently walked inside. Her heart was thumping hard as she approached the door of Julian's room. Taking a sharp and deep breath, Eva then pushed it open. Her eyes widened at the sight of two naked people on the bed, f***ing ferociously like animals in heat. Eva stood there frozen, and then her phone slipped from her hand due to shock, causing Julian Park to whirl around. He cursed at the sight of Eva standing at the door. The woman also looked up with wide eyes, and at the sight of her, Eva's face paled as if she had seen a ghost, unable to believe that the woman her fiancé was f***ing was no other than her younger sister, Eva Young. Julian roared out in irritation. "What the duck, Eva? What are you doing here, barging into my house like this?" Eva did not speak, she could not. She only stared at the woman who was supposed to be her sister. Julian leaned in and whispered, "We're over, Eva. I heard the news. You are not a legitimate Young. You're nothing but a nameless bumpkin right now, and yet you dare to come here. Are you thinking of coming to seek shelter in my place? Listen, I was only engaged to you because we thought you're the Young's legitimate daughter." He smirked at her mockingly as he pulled back. Eva could feel her eyes burning so badly, but she bravely held back her tears. Clenching her fist tight, Eva opened her mouth and spoke. "Oh, is that so?" Her eyes burning with an intensity that made Julian feel a strange and slight shiver, and unable to tear his eyes away. She smirked as she glanced at the girl on his bed. Eva stated, "Listen to me, Julian, and listen well. One day I will make sure that you, too, will die from utter regret." And before Julian could react, the door had already slammed shut with a loud bang right before his face. After leaving her ex-fiancé and supposed sister behind at the apartment with as much dignity and composure as she could muster, she swiftly made her way to her car. After regaining her composure, she started the engine and accelerated away from the place she never wanted to return to. Suddenly, she slammed on the brakes, bringing her car to a halt in front of a bar called Devil's Den along the highway. Determined to find solace, she entered the bar, which was crowded with regular patrons. Leaning against the counter, she decided to order a stronger drink than her usual choices. She requested a Long Island iced tea, extra strong, and began to drink in silence. The taste of the alcohol burned her throat, but she found solace in its sharpness and sting. Feeling overwhelmed, she wailed, questioning why she had been cast aside so easily. She recalled a childhood memory of being neglected while her parents showered her sister with love. The feeling of being ignored and unvalued resurfaced, intensifying her anguish. Her internal monologue spiraled, desperately seeking answers and release from the pain. The bartender observed her as she sipped her drink, offering a milder option typically preferred by women. Eva smiled wryly, declining the offer and expressing her intention to get drunk for the first time in her life. Reflecting on the irony of her situation, she laughed bitterly and finished her drink in one go. She signaled for another glass, her eyes now unfocused. As Eva became increasingly intoxicated, she engaged in a conversation with her glass, expressing her frustrations and regrets. She lamented her dedication to her career and the sacrifices she had made, feeling that she had missed out on a normal life. She criticized her family for never truly considering her as one of their own and vowed to make them regret their treatment of her. In her anger, she attracted the attention of a man sitting next to her, who questioned her ability to bring them down. Startled by his presence, Eva struggled to respond. The man suggested that she wait until she was more sober before making any decisions. Undeterred, she grabbed his collar and declared her determination to make them all beg, even if it meant selling her soul to the devil. The man smirked, cautioning her to be careful what she wished for and hinting at his own involvement. Eva challenged him to introduce her to the devil, expressing her willingness to make a deal. The man smiled and stood up, towering over her. Warned her that once she met the devil, there would be no turning back. Undeterred, Eva insisted on meeting him, expressing her readiness to follow him to hell if it meant getting what she wanted. He gently lifted her chin and the man smiled and agreed to grant her wish. Eva's eyes abruptly opened, and she sat up with a start as her heart raced. She realized she was now inside a spacious room, illuminated by bright light. Suddenly, a throbbing pain surged through her head, as if a massive force was squeezing her brain relentlessly. She remembered entering a bar and ordering a strong alcoholic drink. There was also a man involved, although she couldn't recall his face. All she could remember was briefly holding his hand. A sudden realization struck her, causing her eyes to widen. She frantically checked herself, patting her body and assessing her overall condition. She was still wearing her business suit and felt no physical abnormalities, except for her missing shoes and blazer, which she found neatly arranged on a nearby chair. Her glasses were also there, providing a sense of relief. She let out a sigh of reassurance, convinced that nothing untoward had occurred. She double-checked herself and then covered her face with her hands, realizing the predicament she had gotten herself into. Finally, she gathered herself and rose from the bed, only to be greeted by an unpleasant odor. She wrinkled her nose and retrieved her shoes and jacket. Barefoot, she ventured out of the room and was astounded by the opulence of the house. She hurried towards the grand staircase, noting the marble steps, bronze handrails, chandeliers, and ballrooms, confirming her suspicion that the house was built in the 1800s. Upon reaching the ground floor, she encountered a massive fireplace adorned with exquisite marble mantels and mirrored panels. She couldn't fathom how she ended up in such a place. As she looked around, mouth agape, she noticed the emptiness of the spacious area. Determined to leave, she made her way towards the massive double doors. However, before she could touch the doorknob, a voice startled her, causing her heart to race even more. Eva turned around and saw the man she had met at the bar, suddenly remembering his face. "Where am I?" she demanded, attempting to conceal her racing heart. "In hell," he replied with a devilish smile. Eva furrowed her brow, taken aback by his response. He chuckled and continued, "Did you not express a desire to meet the devil?" Eva glared at him aggressively, suspecting that he was playing games with her. In a flash, she remembered the things she had said to him at the club. She felt a lump in her throat, suppressing the urge to shout at him, and facepalmed. She closed her eyes tightly, grateful that she hadn't uttered those embarrassing words of disapproval. He approached her, and suddenly his forefinger gently pressed on the lines between her brows. "Easy there, pet," his voice soothed. Eva caught his wrist and glared at him. He chuckled and sighed. "You're taking things too seriously, pet." She flung his wrist aside and emitted an unladylike snort. Her words were curt, dismissive, and did not invite further conversation. She turned towards the door, but he abruptly slammed his palm against it, causing her heart to race once again. Then he leaned in and whispered in her ear, "If you think a simple thank you and sorry will suffice, then allow me to extend my apologies. Sorry to disappoint you, little kitten, but this devil won't be satisfied with just that, especially after all the things you've done." Eva swallowed, confused. What things had she done? "Seems you have yet to remember your actions." "Very well, I suppose I'll have to provide you with some evidence to convince you that I am not fabricating anything." "Evidence?" she stammered, taken aback that he had evidence against her. Reluctantly, Eva turned around and saw him loosening the ties of his robe. With a languid smile on his face, he murmured in a seductive tone, "Right here, little kitten." His long, slender finger pointed to two conspicuous marks on his neck, a hickey and a bite mark. Eva's eyes widened in shock.